Joining us now, Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. He's on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf. Thanks for having me.
If the president does go forward with military action against the regime of Bashar al-Assad, would you support that?
Well, I would. I think all options have to be on the table. These are horrendous war crimes, and I believe, Wolf, they will continue unless we do something about it. I think we lost considerable credibility a couple of years ago with the red line that was passed and turned into a green light. We need to do something, and I think that should be aimed at Assad's air power, his air assets, because that's what he's using for the barrel bombing and the delivering of these chemical weapons.
Will you vote for AUMF, the authorization for the use of military force in Syria, specific legislation giving the president that authority to launch strikes?
I'd want to see the specific legislation, but I am absolutely heading in that direction because these sorts of attacks against these citizens, these crimes, heinous crimes, will continue unless someone steps in and does something. The UN has been unable to do anything. Other nations have not stood up. Russia and China have actually been a shield for Assad. We need to act now. I think the world and humanity is demanding that we do that. And I know that the president is considering this action. He has talked to his Secretary of Defense, and I have great confidence in General Mattis to supply the president with the right information so he can make the final decision.
I know the military, as they always do, they have various contingency plans. One option, airstrikes. Another option, cruise missile strikes. The third option, boots on the ground, U.S. forces actually moving into Syria. Would you support that last option?
Well, I'm at a point where I want to make sure that these crimes against humanity cease, and I think one of the things we could do right now is go after Assad's air assets, which is what he is using to put him in an advantage against the people in his country. I think that on the ground, Assad loses the efforts against him if he does not have the air assets to continue to deliver these chemical weapons that were supposed to have all been removed under President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry.
But how worried are you about all the Russian military personnel in Syria working with the regime of Bashar al-Assad, the Iranians who are there working with Hezbollah, which supports Bashar al-Assad as well? This could escalate dramatically if it's not done properly.
Well, you're absolutely right about having it done properly, but I think even the Russians have said that their support for Assad is not unconditional. They're not willing to stand behind him no matter what he does, and I think these sorts of assaults on humanity are going to continue under Assad, and I think that the Russians were likely surprised that this happened because of what was happening on the ground in Syria, where Assad's forces were likely to have fallen had he not gone with the chemical weapons.
I'll show you some live pictures now, Senator, of the plane carrying the Chinese president just landed in West Palm Beach. President Xi Jinping is going to have dinner tonight at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach with the president. Lots of issues on the agenda, but here's the key question. Will China come forward and take the necessary steps to squeeze North Korea on its nuclear threat? That's what President Trump is pressing for.
Well, and I support President Trump in his efforts on that. China clearly has the leverage. 90% of North Korea's trading is with China, so they have significant financial influence, that is China with North Korea. And I think that this is a very consequential weekend of the presidents of both of these countries coming together. And I encourage President Trump to continue to press the point.
But if the Chinese don't come forward and do what the U.S. wants, the president has suggested, you know what, the U.S. will take its own actions. How far would you support U.S. actions? All options supposedly are on the table in North Korea as well.
Well, we cannot allow North Korea to become a nuclear superpower. They have made significant advances recently in rocketry, as well as in nuclear material. And we need to continue to prevent that. We have defensive weaponry capable in Japan, in South Korea. We cannot allow North Korea to become a nuclear power, and China is really in the consequential position to stop that. They need to be part of the solution.
So the other big issue, trade between the U.S. and China. You've heard all of the statements that the president made as a candidate, and even since then, about China. Let me play some clips for you just to remind you. Listen to this as we await the arrival of the Chinese president.
they think we're run by a bunch of idiots. And what's going on with China is unbelievable.
Not only now have they taken our jobs and they've taken our base and they've taken our manufacturing, but now they're pulling us down with them.
China, what they've done to us is the greatest single theft in the history of the world.
All right, so are these leaders going to be able to overcome statements like that as they get together for dinner tonight and more formal discussions tomorrow?
Yeah, I also always believe that it's more important to be face-to-face, but I'm somebody that supports free trade. I want it to be fair trade, but in Wyoming, certainly we are an export of our #1 cash crop is beef, as well as exporting trona, liquefied natural gas. I think there's a lot to be gained for us in America with additional trade. I think that helps our economy overall.
Senator Barrasso, thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Wolf.